Welcome back to the show. Today we have Andrew Jewett. He's the founder and co-CEO at Aperture Real Estate and Property Coin. Andrew, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing kind of with Aperture and Property Coin are actually kind of pretty, innovative in space that's maybe not necessarily known for its innovation. But maybe before we get into all that fun stuff, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town just outside of Boston, and went to college right there as well, a college called Babson College, very small business and entrepreneurial college focused on, just that, entrepreneurship and business. And I actually played hockey there. So
Very cool.
Yeah, it's been in my blood for a long time, entrepreneurship. My dad's family has a long line of entrepreneurs, and my dad himself is an entrepreneur. So it's kind of always been part of my ethos of, getting out and doing my own thing. But before I could really do that, I went to Wall Street and worked there for, 12 years, focused on the residential real estate space, and then was, after that, the co-head of a capital markets at the largest residential fix and flip real estate operator in the United States, where I met my one of our co-founders. I actually met my other co-founder, Matt Miles, at RBS and Greenwich Capital, where we worked together for, I've worked with Matt my entire career. So, this is our third company together. And so we've got a pretty cool team, but yeah, that's the, the how I got here story, but there's plenty more to be built upon that, as it relates to Aperture.
Sure. No, I think that's cool because most people do, one, maybe a couple companies with somebody, but it's cool that you've kind of done your whole career with your co-founder. I think that's quite fascinating, actually.
Yeah, we definitely have a yin and yang approach to things.
That's awesome.
Each other quite well, and we're friends. We live right down the street. His kids are hang around my house a lot, and we our families get together. So it's a really nice relationship we have, and we work quite well together.
Sure. So what exactly is Aperture, and why did you guys decide to start it up?
So Aperture is a tech-enabled real estate investment and lending company. So what we do is two primary things. We buy distressed residential real estate across the country.
Okay.
We fix it up and we sell it, fix and flip. And then we also lend to other smaller fix and flip investors. But what Aperture really is the kind of culmination of our careers worth of being in the real estate industry, and the thought that we can utilize data and technology to enhance and improve upon the processes of a pretty well-worn model. As I mentioned, Matt and I met our third co-founder at the largest operator in this space, and we wanted to go do our own thing, and we had some ideas about how to best utilize big data and technology to kind of to really do that, to not only create new acquisition sources, just avenues with which we source assets,
Sure,
but also kind of improve the efficiency by utilizing a custom and tech-enabled system to manage the entire process. So whether it's we're writing a loan or buying a property, everybody's day jobs live inside this system, and the system manages all of the kind of nuts and bolts of buying a house and of writing a loan.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the thing that kind of fascinates me about what you guys are kind of doing is the data side of it all, right? Because obviously it would be a huge amount of work to have actual human beings kind of go through this. To be honest, I would probably even argue it's impossible. But actually having kind of the whole data side of your business is actually the whole fascinating part of it. So without getting into kind of the trade secret stuff, how does it kind of work when you're looking at, doing an investment? How do you use that data to actually, decide what you're going to invest in?
Sure. So to start, we kind of think about it like a funnel, right? The top of the funnel is our system analyzes over 3,000 houses a day in the market we operate in. Yeah, that's like you said, it would be impossible for any one person or even a team of people to to analyze those on a daily basis. So system brings it in. We run our analytics on it, and again, you said it. We got some special sauce that we like to keep secret, but
Sure.
we run it through our algorithms, and then that spits out basically the best, call it 100 to 200 properties a day that we think are, or the system thinks are attractive, and then from there, our traders are. So we have really experienced team of property traders, and basically what they are is a mix of a property investor and a general contractor. So that kind of combination provides a very unique set of skills, which really there's only probably a handful, maybe 10 people in the country that have been doing this at any scale, and we've got a few of them. And so they're putting their kind of personalized review on it after that. And so our model, our bid model are calibrated to highly data driven and analysis of each property, depending on where it is, what type of house it is, when are we buying it, what kind of repairs do we think we're going to need. And so all of that gets built into the system, and then the trader says, I like this price, but I think I can get it at 10% less, so I'm gonna try and bid at this price or that price. And so that's basically how it works in a very short form version. But the system performs that kind of initial screen, and then gives the human touch, black box versus white box, a review of each and every property that we think is interesting every day.
Sure. No, I think that makes sense. So how did you guys decide to come up with Property Coin, and what exactly is it?
So what it is a digital security, essentially.
Okay.
Some call them cryptocurrencies, some call them security tokens. It is a digital investment security. There's no two ways about it, and we've not wanted it to be anything other than that from the get-go. But the reason why we did it and how we stumbled upon it was we spent all of kind of the end of 2016 and all of 2017 building out our systems, our team, and kind of testing it with our own money. Testing out some new markets, testing out some new rehab strategies, testing out some just new investment styles. And really we wanted to do that with our own money before we, took on, some real investor money, because,
Sure.
That's the responsible thing to do. And we wanted to make sure that we had it down. So that was kind of, we're contemplating a bigger capital raise in mid 2017. And that was right around the time that ICOs were kind of going crazy.
Right.
We got introduced to a couple people who were heavily into that space, and it kind of dawned on us that as former investment bankers and people who have issued over $150 billion worth of securities backed by assets, that nobody in this space was doing it right. The whole segregated bank accounts, segregated entities, monthly reporting, all of the kind of the best practices of the traditional securities world were not being applied to blockchain and ICOs. And so we saw an opportunity as people who knew how to issue securities, people who had the connections in that market, and had a company that needed capital to go do this. So basically what our offering does is it raises money to fund the acquisitions of both properties and loans that our two businesses originate. And then we're going to reinvest all the profits from those property and loans, 100%, all of it, back into new properties and loans, so that each token, so if you bought one token that represents a fractionalized piece of the portfolio, by reinvesting those profits over time, that piece, the first price is $3 when you can buy it.
Sure.
That hopefully that price goes to $3.25, $3.50, $4, $5, $7, $10. Over time as you reinvest, the value of compounding. Everybody's econ teachers taught them in Econ
Sure.
101. It's real, and so we hope that provides the crypto market and the ICO and the kind of burgeoning securities token market with a kind of stable, growing value appreciation asset over time.
Interesting. So the thing that I found kind of fascinating about kind of what you guys are doing is it's kind of a new take on how to get people into actual real estate investing because, and correct me if I'm wrong, from what I understand, you basically need to have a pretty significant kind of net worth or cash on hand that you could basically put into real estate investing. Is that, but you guys are kind of breaking down that barrier. Is that a kind of correct way of putting it?
I think so. Yeah, and you know, in the U.S., unfortunately, we're in a regulatory environment where only accredited investors can invest. So, in the U.S., we've been limited just by securities regulation, and that's unfortunate, but it's
Okay.
just the way it works. But globally, yeah, we want to make this a democratized access to not only real estate investing, but fix and flip investing.
Okay.
From our knowledge and having been at the largest operator in this space, there's really no way for a non-institutional investor to get access to the fix and flip market, aside from, like you said, having a serious amount of cash to invest in the properties yourselves. And then, you know, by the way, you have to actually manage those. So that in and of itself is kind of a pain. It
Sure.
is a pain if you're not a professional investor. So yeah, the goal here is to make this a democratized and kind of easily accessible access for people to invest in the real estate industry. And you know, our third partner Rudy talks about all this all the time. Like his life has been changed by investing in real estate. You know, we none of us came from any money, but he started investing in real estate early, and you know, managed to accumulate significant wealth as a result of
Interesting.
that. And so we want to provide that to people. We want to be the kind of you know, the leaders in the space of bringing real assets and real estate in specific to the blockchain.
Interesting. So for maybe people that don't know what kind of blockchain is, do you maybe want to quickly kind of explain that? Because I think it's kind of a big kind of buzz term right now, but I think still some people don't really know quite what it is yet.
Yeah, you know, it's the hyper simple version of it is it's a ledger, right? So if I send you one Bitcoin, that there's millions of computers around the world racing to validate that I sent that to you and that transaction existed. And the beauty of it is that once that transaction has happened, the next transaction is built on top of that. So there's another block,
Interesting.
and blocks and blocks and blocks build up, and it becomes nearly impossible to change anything about that first block. So it becomes an immutable ledger of trades and transactions. And so if you step back and think about that holistically, that becomes really valuable in a lot of things. I mean, think about real estate titling.
Sure.
That in and of itself is a ledger, and that is the single largest asset class in the world. So could you imagine having everybody's title for their house on the blockchain? I mean, that's kind of like the biggest use case that I can think of. But somebody said it to me the other day of, you know, think of blockchain is very buzzy right now, but I can honestly envision a time in the next 3, 4, 5 years where you know, it becomes kind of like saying, you know, oh, I run an internet company. You know,
Interesting.
everybody
Yeah.
uses the internet now, and I think we're getting to the point where everybody's going to be using the blockchain, that it's going to become so ubiquitous that it would be as though, you know, saying I have a blockchain company in 5 years is like saying I have an internet, or I use email. You know,
Sure.
it's going to become that ubiquitous as a form of registry.
No, that I think I agree with you. I think it's quite fascinating, and I'm already starting to get the like we're blockchain developer email to outsource kind of stuff. So people are starting to include it in kind of how they're pitching their services, right? Maybe
Right.
spam emails are kind of a bad example of that, but I think it's becoming such a popular kind of thing. I think you're right. It'll just be like, well, of course it's that, right?
Right. Yeah.
So so how does property coin kind of work? Like I give you some money, you know, it gets converted into these coins. How does that kind of work from there?
So you're right. So you give us Ether, Bitcoin, or cash,
Okay.
US dollars, and it gets converted back into cash because unfortunately we can't really use any of those to go out and buy properties yet, but
Right.
we're hoping that eventually we can. Um, And then we take all of that money, invest them in properties and real estate. All the profits get reinvested. So your token represents a fractionalized piece of that portfolio, and hopefully it's going to grow and grow and grow over time. If you want to get out and monetize your investment, we will have a liquidity reserve. So people can redeem their tokens with us. But more importantly, they're going to be traded on exchanges. So we've announced that we're going to be partnering with T0, who is one of the biggest security tokens, or probably the biggest in terms of just publicity out there. We're also currently in negotiations with both Templum and Open Finance to have a property coin issued on their exchanges as well. And we're hopefully working through a partnership with Bancor, although that one is still way, way off, and I don't want to give anybody any false hope on that, but we are having conversations with them on that. So we hope that over time there'll be an immense amount of liquidity for this in the secondary markets, because what we'd hope to do, and a lot of people ask us about this, is why aren't you paying dividends? We want to make sure that this is a stable and growing asset versus a just stable asset. Because of that hope that we can get people interested in investing in real estate and seeing assets grow over time. It's almost like a forced reinvestment or a forced investment into your 401k, right? We're taking all that money and reinvesting it for the benefit of the coin holders, and we're coin holders too. So we initially will retain 5% of the tokens issued.
Okay.
They vest over a 3-year period of time. And then over time, as we perform, we can own up to 20% of the population of the tokens issued. But we only get that allocation, that full allocation, if we've doubled the underlying asset value of the tokens.
Interesting. Okay. No, that's quite fascinating. So how does it kind of work? Is it somewhat similar to what you guys are doing with Aperture, how you decide kind of what properties to invest in, or how is kind of how you go about doing things in Aperture different or the same as how you're going to do it with Property Coin?
It's the exact same.
Okay.
So we just view this as a different funding source for us. When we're analyzing properties, the traders have absolutely no idea which bucket of capital this is going to be put in. Their whole job is to produce the most profitable trades. So then we on the back end in the management team, say, hey, we've got $5 million that we need to spend of property coin money. So $5 million of property coin money takes $5 million worth of assets. It's just a constant recycle of capital. So, like I said before, we see 3,000 houses a day, probably 100 to 200 of those are interesting. Even if we were buying 2 of those a day, that would still require $40 million worth of capital. So
wow.
There's no shortage of opportunity. Hence why we want this to be, I would love if Property Coin was a $1 billion ecosystem.
Sure.
Obviously, we're not going to get there in short order, but over time, we hope that it can be. So
interesting.
We're starting with 50 million. We wanted to be responsible in our growth in that, and we think we can put $50 million to work very easily. But yeah, if from our perspective, it's business as usual. It's a function of which bucket of capital we're using.
Got you. Okay. So what kind of states or cities kind of are you guys buying properties in? I know it's in a handful of states, but just to give the listener kind of an idea.
Yeah. We're in 12 cities or 12 markets across the country, largely in the Southeast, some in the Midwest. We do buy in California, although we think that California, and we're based in California, but we think California is a little bit overheated right now,
Sure.
Particularly in San Francisco and LA, and those are kind of like the biggest 2 markets. So we'll buy deals in California, but it's kind of here and there if we see a really good deal. But largely across the southeast of the U.S., some parts of we're venturing into the northeast a little bit. We'll see. We're kind of testing that out right now. It hasn't been a big market for us so far, but we're testing it out a little bit. And then parts of the Midwest.
Okay. So you correct me if I'm wrong. You guys have physical people in those markets, or at least contractors to go check out the physical properties, because you'd be constantly flying around checking out places. It's just not really
Right.
effective for somebody probably on your immediate team in California to be flying all over constantly, right?
Right, exactly. But that's the beauty of the system, right? Is that we manage the whole process within our system, and it makes that rehab and oversight of the rehabs much more efficient. But you're right, we do. It's called we call it the hub and spoke model. So we leverage local contractors and local realtors, all of which we've vetted to manage the process for us. But
Okay.
we have an in-house general contractor whose job it is to oversee those rehabs on a daily basis, and to the level of we need expense reports, we need status reports on rehab, we need pictures every week, or else our contractors don't get paid.
Interesting.
So we incent them to give us kind of real-time, up-to-date data and information, and we've got their the local broker on top of them, because they want to list the property, right? They're going to get commission on the back end. They want the property listed as quick as possible. So it's a nice little bit of game theory in making the contractors do the work, and then we pay them for the work, but only if they've done the job, and then having the broker on top of them as well.
No, I think that it's actually quite an interesting model to me that, I haven't really seen in really any other industry, really, right? Like just how you're using property coin and kind of people data, and then bringing it back into kind of the physical world, obviously with real estate. But that to me, I think I think we're just kind of at the beginning of that kind of boom where you're bringing technology back into the real world. And, what you guys are doing with kind of both companies is doing that. And that's kind of where I see a lot of growth for kind of any startups, right? Not just necessarily in the real estate space, just in any kind of space. So it's fascinating what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and I think that's what the beauty of what blockchain is starting to do, is allow companies to really utilize that technology for old world assets, right? Real estate, shipping, title registries, pretty much anything you want to be able to track and utilize data to analyze. The blockchain is going to change all of that, and it's really exciting. And I think you're right. You're going to start to see some of these old world companies, healthcare, they're all come into the tech space via blockchain, and it's super exciting, and it's fun to be at the forefront, because really we get calls all the time from traditional real estate and finance people asking what's going on, and becoming a subject matter expert on this has been really cool and fun.
Sure. Well, Andrew, we're coming to the end of the show, so maybe let's close with mentioning where people can get more information about both companies, and anything else you want to mention to close out the show.
Yeah. So propertycoin.re is the ICO or STO website, and then aperture.re is our main thing. But look, we want to be forthright and forthcoming with everybody on this. We view this as the future of securities issuance and assets, the way assets are owned. So to the extent there's people out there that are interested in, not only just are investing in the project, but also just doing a project of your own, or wanting to learn more about it, we view this as a share the pie, not a zero-sum game here. So we want to be helpful. We want to be collaborative with others in the space, and I think that's unique in terms of real estate in old world, but it's very much the open source model for the tech space. So feel free to reach out to us via those websites, and Twitter is, I think, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are all aperture_RE and property_coin. So check us out.
Perfect, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. Bye.